I had a nickel for every time I read a book review that said something along the lines of, I couldn't finish this, I didn't like the protagonist at all, I'd probably have 6 or 7 nickels, which may not be enough to buy me any lunch. However, it is enough for me to make a rant style video about this issue. Dislikable protagonists make reading better. I think that if you are avoiding books because you dislike the protagonist, you are missing out on one of the core fundamental features of literature. Today, I want to go through 3 reasons that I see people say that they avoid books for disliking protagonists, and then kind of give my rebuttal for each of those reasons, and hopefully broaden your perspective to enter into some of these books with more of an open mind and see maybe that you can get something out of reading a book, and you may even learn something from reading a book with a dislikable protagonist. One of the major reasons that I see people, or that I assume people dislike reading dislikable protagonists, is that the world around them is already so chaotic and dislikable that they are going to books for comfort. Totally understand that. That makes a lot of sense to me. These modern times can be fraught with so much anxiety and so much uncertainty that it may feel like a chore, or it may feel downright uncomfortable to jump into a book and be inside the mind and perspective of someone who you find dislikable, disreputable, just downright mean. I totally understand that. I think that this is probably the hardest one for me to discredit, is too strong of a word, to argue against. Because who am I to tell you what to do with your time? If you want to read magical fairy tales about the world around you, cozy fiction, I think you can see with the rise of genres like cozy fiction, these light novels, lighter reads, you can see a response to a lot of the terrible things that are going on in this world. And I am not here to take any of those books away from you. I will just offer one of the reasons that I read, and I think one of the powerful aspects of reading in general, is to, I guess, rehearse some of these scenarios, to walk through some of these terrible situations in life, hopefully from a position of safety. You know, I'm assuming a lot here, but if you're watching a YouTube video about books, I am going to assume that you are maybe in a safe or stable-ish environment. I don't know you. I'm making a lot of assumptions. This is a YouTube video. Don't get too upset. But just to say that oftentimes what reading can offer us is an ability to enter into some of these terrifying and terrible scenarios, to understand how humans react to them, to see how humans grow and respond to these types of situations. I would liken it to riding a roller coaster or watching horror movies. We are offered the opportunity to enter into terrifying scenarios, unpleasant scenarios, without actually putting ourselves in physical danger or in any harm whatsoever. I can sit down in a nice comfy chair with a cup of tea and read about some of the most terrible human beings on earth and their interactions with other human beings without putting myself in any physical danger. And I think that that is a powerful thing. I think that the opportunity to work through some of these scenarios, to observe how people grow and change in different perspectives, to put on someone else's skin for even a moment, is one of the most powerful tools that reading offers you. It is a way to gain empathy for another human condition. It is a way to gain perspective for how other people think. Reading characters, specifically protagonists, who make terrible choices, who are terrible people, allows you to, I guess, work a little bit on your judgment, to ask yourself the questions of what in this person's life, in a well-drawn, well-written protagonist, would cause them to make these choices. How do they differ from me? These are all incredibly important questions to ask as a human and as someone who is trying to grow into a better human. And through reading these stories as opposed to living them, we can grow in a lower stakes environment. We are not actually going to go through some of these situations, and we're not actually going to make the judgments that could cause harm to other people. We can judge protagonists, they're just protagonists on the page. but we can then examine our judgments and try to understand them a little bit better without causing any offense to anybody else. So yes, I understand that if you are just trying to read to unwind or for comfort, that you may not want to spend time inside the mind of some unsavory characters. But if you find yourself at a moment of peace in your life, I would recommend or encourage that you give reading some books with terrible protagonists a try, with terrible characters, to see if you can glean some understanding of why this person makes decisions, how they grow, and how to, I guess, blunt your judgment of these people and gain a better understanding. Another big reason that I see why people don't like negative, bad protagonists, evil protagonists, flawed protagonists, choose any adjective that you would like, is a culture of self-insert that I think has grown throughout, especially the fantasy and sci-fi world, but you see it also in anime, in manga. I think maybe in literature in general, we as readers put ourselves in the shoes of our protagonists a lot of the time. And so it's harder to identify as a person with a protagonist who continues to make flawed decisions, who may be treating people around them very poorly. I find that you lose a lot of the opportunity for self-insert, or it just feels icky. It just feels like, I don't really want to self-insert into a situation like this. I can't really identify with this character. But again, I will take you back to the first point. If you are trying to build empathy in this world, which I think is probably a positive trait to try and work on and be better at, what better way do you have for a moment, in a book, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to reason through why they are making the decisions that they are making? Self-insert culture, it doesn't really work for me. I usually try and read as someone who is an objective observer. I want to be a part of the story, yes, but more so as like a kind of a third person, just kind of seeing the action take place. That is how I read. That doesn't mean that that's how you have to read, but I will encourage you again, maybe just one time, try not to insert yourself. Try not to, I guess, identify so much with the character, and instead be a neutral observer. Try and understand why they're making the decisions that they're making, why they are treating the people around them the way that they are treating them. Try to build an understanding. That's all I'm asking, is to enter into a piece of fiction and try to find understanding and empathy with that character. Again, as a way to practice these scenarios in the real world. This is an incredible tool that we have been given. We are offered the ability to see from a ton of different perspectives at low to no cost for us. There is no physical harm. There is no emotional harm. Most likely, you're not going to come out of reading a book and have any lasting damage done to you. So take the opportunity to understand why characters are acting the way that they are acting. Finally, and maybe most importantly, in this modern social media landscape in which we find ourselves, modern readers, I think, are overhyping and overemphasizing relatability. It seems to me that these fandom cultures or stan cultures want to find characters they can become enamored with and latch onto because they relate to them. They are people that they want to be friends with. They want to be lovers. They want to be brother, sister. They want to create relationships with a lot of these characters. Again, nothing inherently wrong with that prospect. I think if you want to find a lot of depth in a relationship with a character, that can be incredibly comforting in a world where maybe you don't have a lot of the personal relationships that you would like. Finding surrogates can be a good way to fill that void. There is danger in relying on those relationships, but it can be a nice way to find comfort and kind of check out of reality for a little bit. But I think that this is causing a lot of writers, I think the feedback loop is getting back to writers, and we are losing a lot of three-dimensional characters. We're sacrificing the ability to write characters who have flaws and have positives. Instead, we are looking to fantasy and sci-fi as a way to find our perfect representation of a husband or a wife or a non-binary life partner. And we should be looking for these characters to be human, I think. So next time you are reading something and you find yourself not liking the character, ask if you are looking for someone to be your friend or if you are looking for insight into the human condition. That could be a good way to expose yourself to some of these more negative, bad acting type characters without losing a lot of the enjoyment that you may find in reading. Instead of saying, I want to be this person's friend, you could say, I wonder why this person made this choice. And see if that helps. I don't know, it might not. This may be something that nobody in the world really connects with, but I felt that I really needed to make a video like this because I like to read flawed characters. I like to watch flawed characters in film. I think that, again, the superpower of media is that it can provide us an opportunity to engage in these types of stories at low to no cost for the human who is engaging in these stories. And I'm worried that if we continue to create this relatability stan culture that writers, authors, directors, more importantly, publishing houses, the money people will say, well, that book's not going to sell because the main character is not relatable. We need to soften some of the edges. We need to flatten some of the fiction so that we can get a more relatable protagonist. And I'm worried that that is going to take over. And then I'm just going to have to reread some of my favorite books. So maybe that's not such a terrible thing. But I love engaging with newer works. So I hope that we can write and create and continue to put humanity forward with all of its flaws, with all of its rough edges, and that we can avoid flattening fiction. I think that that would be generally a positive. Now it's time for my favorite thing. If you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. If you are a self-insert lover of relatable main characters, please let me know why. Again, always trying to broaden my perspective and understanding with the videos that I put out on this channel. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out all the other book videos that we have. I just love reading and I love making content about it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you are reading something very, very good, and I will see you in the next video.